Alrighty, we are back. Your favorite podcast show of the week. This is Location Weekly. It's episode number 515. That's a big number. And we're recording live on May the 4th, or May the 4th be with you, I think some people say. It's Star Wars Day, I guess. So yeah, are you feeling the Force is with you today, Aubriana? How are you?
I could use some force to be with me. So I hope so. I mean, I'm making it through. I'm like doing the mom thing, doing the moving thing, doing the work thing. So I'm doing my best to manage. So I've got to have some force with me, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yes, definitely. So, well, good
How
for you.
about you? Are you
I'm
feeling
okay. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling like, no sort of issues from the vaccine or anything like that. So, economy seems to be stable. It's looking like the cases are going down again here in Ontario. So there's hope and that we could reopen soon in the next couple of weeks. I'm hoping. So that's good. And I'm getting excited about this TV show thing that I'm doing, which is now 30 days away from now. I'll be hopefully in Miami recording that. So that'll be fun. That'll be interesting. So
Yeah, I'm excited for you.
yeah. So anyhow, we've got a good show coming up. We've got four stories as usual that we're going to cover. An array of interesting things, some acquisitions and financings to talk about today. So I'll let Aubriana start us off.
All right, so we'll kick it off with an acquisition. Snap has acquired a 3D mapping company called Pixel 8 Earth. This company is a Boulder, Colorado-based company, and they acquired them for 7.6 million. So likely a pretty small startup there. But this transaction took place right around the same time that they had this Fit Analytics $124 million deal that they undertook as well. So they're kind of on this acquisition spree. We've seen them buying up some smaller companies, and they're going to keep 4 of the employees on board, supposedly to work on this map product development and building out some tools that are going to be used with the location-based augmented reality features that Snap's been rolling out, like their local lenses. It's not super clear if Snap's going to keep them as their own company or if they're just going to roll up their tech. I mean, if I were a betting woman, my money would be that they're just going to roll up their technology. And some interesting things to think about as Snap continues to buy up these companies and how they're performing is they reported in February, I think it was maybe at their investors meeting or something, that they had about 250 million people using the Snap map on a monthly basis. So they're definitely seeing some growth and some adoption of that feature for sure. And they're also looking at other new fields right now. They're looking at social shopping, connected commerce, all of these different kind of more payment related options. And I think that that's really cool. I like the idea that they are, starting to I don't know, pull these things together because their lenses are fun, right? And they have these ads that are running, which are good as well. But like being able to shop and have that commerce piece of it with their advertisers, I think is huge. I think it's what makes them unique, honestly. And they're really looking to ramp up this map features as well. And seeing more story posting, more people going out now that the vaccination, is getting a lot of massive adoption, and they're starting to see improvement in health and just opportunities for people to get out with the warmer weather. So, I think they're really looking to have these like behaviors going back to maybe what they were before, an inflection there coming up. So this is cool, to get a glimpse of like what's their roadmap look like, what are they headed towards, and obviously very, very focused on the location features. And they keep investing in that and investing in companies that can bring that technology to them. For a company like Snap, 7 point whatever million is kind of probably their monthly like toilet paper fund. So they can kind of print that in their sleep at this point. So small investment, but probably great for that company. And obviously that's a high priority for them.
It is, and for me, I really like this deal for a couple of reasons. So one is obviously, as the head of the Location-Based Marketing Association, and kind of looking at it from our industry's point of view, it really to me is a strong statement, a strong signal that Snap believes in the power of location data, and how you layer that into experiences and augmented reality and their local lenses and everything they do. It's I won't go so far as to say they're a location company completely yet, but they're on they're definitely there, right? Like in terms of features and capabilities and data, right? So they're they may not have started with the same heritage as say a Foursquare, like from that point of view, but in terms of data and analytics, I think they're you could argue they're on par there in many ways in terms of their capabilities. So I think that's interesting. I think as far as the acquisition specifically, I like it for two reasons. One is if you're investing in location data analytics and mapping capabilities, going to the heart of at least the North American heart of that world is Boulder, Colorado, right? So that's where Google Earth's team is based, and operations is based. The four founders of Pixel 8 Earth, I looked in a little bit into their background, so they're all either connected to GeoIQ or Digital Globe in their background. So these guys are strong location mapping and data company backgrounds. So I assume those are the four people that are moving along. I don't know that for sure, but there were four founders of Pixel 8 Earth. So I think that's really interesting, and I think it's a really strong endorsement by Snap and by Evan and the team over there that they really believe in the importance of location data and mapping and how that can play into the future of their products. And I think specifically around the augmented reality and the lenses part, there's a huge growth opportunity there. I think as foot traffic starts to come back, as the recovery happens, layering these lenses in terms of retail experiences and engagement, I think becomes huge, right? So I'm excited about this. I'm looking forward to seeing what new features can be born or extended upon the existing Snap map and the local lenses platforms.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Snap has a great application for utilizing user data, right? For getting that location data, there's a great application for it. So I think that the road ahead for them is much brighter than it was probably 5 years ago.
Yeah, so there you go. All right, moving from what's going on in Colorado these days to over to Europe now. An interesting partnership has emerged between Tracesafe, which is a leading wearable safety tech workforce safety solution company, and Plot Projects, which is a company well known to us at the LBMA out of our Dutch operations. So they've teamed up to kind of take the wearable safety technologies that Tracesafe has and blending that with Plot Projects, which specializes in kind of Bluetooth and beacon and geofencing solutions. And ultimately, what we're talking about here is developing a package of solutions that is privacy-centric in its design and providing workplace safety. So one of the challenges right now in a pandemic time is many employers, many workplaces are finding the need to understand what's going on physically within their environments. So, obviously on this show for years, we've talked about, beacon technology and things like that. But, when it comes to doing that in a way that is anonymous and privacy compliant, that's a whole new world, right? And it's sort of something that's, really emphasized when you look at what's going on, in this specific COVID time. So doing things like, measuring are people properly social distancing inside of a factory or a workplace environment, if somebody has tested positive or, is a known case, knowing who else was in close proximity to them, and being able to notify them, or having the employer be able to quickly identify that and kind of limit the number of cases or potential outbreaks or things like that become really important. And so obviously location technology, indoor positioning technology, wearable devices that employees can have on them, all of that stuff can play a huge role in making that easier and more efficient. And so I think one of the keys to this partnership in particular is not just the hardware technology synergies between the two companies, but that both companies are really coming at this from a privacy by design, anonymous data point of view. So the joint solution basically anonymizes all the data. It's and it's able to kind of operate without any kind of GPS or sort of need for satellite data or things like that in terms of tracking. So I think it's interesting. I can tell you, if I put on my other hat at Ground Level Insights here, in the work we're doing with our CannaTrace solution and working with a lot of employers, we're hearing about this specific need almost every day. Like, we work with a lot of employers, a lot of factories, warehouses, things like that, and this is something they talk about on a daily basis, right? The need for this kind of workplace safety management solution. So I definitely see the value of this, and I think this brings a really interesting sort of blended solution between the two companies into the European market.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is, on one hand, you're like, is this too little too late here? We're at the, hopefully, what is the tail end of this pandemic? We're looking forward to getting back to some sense of like traveling and normalcy. However, I think that there's going to be this constant that continues with the tracing, right? Because this is not the end of viruses. This is not the end of, anything that maybe is, beyond contagious, but, looking at contagious disease, but also beyond that, when you're thinking about like health, safety, did you see something, being able to know what happened at certain points in time and who was around, and having that maybe anonymous tracking that's available and privacy sensitive, I think can go well beyond just the maybe physical health aspects that we're thinking of here. So I like this. And I think that the future, is bright there for, if it's used in the right way and not in like a creepy Minority Report kind of way. Perhaps there's, great opportunities for us to look at what other implications are there to this type of technology. What I like about ground level more is that there's no like wearable that's necessary. You've got just that equipment that's kind of tracking that in an anonymous way. And just, making sure that that data is captured. Like, are they wearing a mask? Are they, staying 6 feet apart? All of those things that could also just be like, anonymously who was here, sort of like the Apple and Google testing that they wanted to do, where being able to have that anonymous key and kind of that encryption factor to say like, hey, you were near somebody who tested positive, or hey, you were near some event that happened. Did you see anything suspicious, like, or whatever, right? So I think there's some good applications to this, again, if it's applied in a good way.
Yeah, and that being said, though, like I agree with you on that, but I think there are situations where apps aren't appropriate or not possible, or camera analytics like we do for checking for masks are not possible. And so, having other approaches to it with a wearable or something else, I think, is a good idea. And while I 100% agree, and I'm hopeful like you that I think, this virus is starting to, wane and get under control, the reality is we're nowhere near, reopening in the way that we think. So, I'll speak specifically here for Toronto because we're involved. Like downtown, sort of financial district in New York or Chicago or here in Toronto, like those big office towers, the big financial towers and whatnot, they've been completely empty, for a year and a half now, right? And I know people who work in those towers, and they've been told by their employers they're not going back until at least, next January, next spring. And part of that is not just because the virus is under control. It's how do you move, thousands of people, up an elevator, in a timely fashion, and keep social distancing and there's so many things like that that have nothing specifically to do with the virus, right? But are just about proper social distancing and protocols that are going to need to be in place to just make sure that we're not sort of putting ourselves into a bad situation again, right? And things like this that measure distancing and where people are and who was in that elevator or not, become really interesting, right? So, anyways, I definitely see a market for these types of things as we go forward. So,
Yeah.
next story.
Yeah. And on that same note, of companies that are taking advantage perhaps of like sorry, taking advantage of perhaps what is to most of humankind's detriment. We're going to try and see how we can position this as a business win. Quotient has launched what they're calling a vaccination dashboard. No, this is not to help you find a place to get a vaccination or get in line or get an appointment. This is actually targeted towards advertisers. So buyers can use this tool to monitor shifts in foot traffic. They can identify opportunities to reach consumers specifically around these COVID-19 vaccination sites. So whenever those vaccines are being distributed, they can look at, those places like grocery stores, pharmacies, doctors' offices all across the US. And, basically what they're hoping is obviously, I think I've seen a lot of lines for waiting for vaccinations, socially distanced lines nonetheless, but also there's this 15-minute waiting period where you kind of just got to hang out and make sure everything's okay before you get up and go after getting this vaccine. And this waiting period creates an additional opportunity for advertisers and retailers to engage with consumers that are in that specific area. And they're saying that this is a time of high purchase intent. Maybe it's a great time to show them an ad for travel, like, hey, I'm feeling super safe now that I got my vaccine, my second shot. Like, let me go ahead and book some flights out here in the future. So this is basically helping these advertisers to gain this insight into movement in and around these locations and take advantage of it. So, this is very interesting to me that you're like, it's on one hand, it's like a medical thing and you feel kind of a little bit questionable about that. But on the other hand, it's more about the dwell time, right? Like you've got people that are, in higher numbers than usual around these facilities for specific purposes. So why not show them something specifically if your product or, service that you're selling is maybe something that they feel more equipped to purchase or go do, after being able to have this vaccination. So I find this, interesting and like honestly good on Quotient for thinking about this and how to connect those advertisers with consumers while they know they're going to be just sitting there scrolling on their phones.
Yeah, so so I'll say this. I think this is, for Quotient, this is a great move. I think it opens up some interesting, sort of niche targeting opportunities for advertisers at a very opportune time. There's a lot of dwell time there. People are waiting in lines. It makes complete sense. I mean, obviously, the counter to that is I think there's nothing unique about this at all. Any location data analytics company could, offer a similar targeting service, by simply mapping out those vaccination sites and then, sort of, offering up the IDs that are there. So, but good on them for doing it. Good on them for being the first to kind of position around that. I think it makes a ton of sense. And I think there are a lot of advertisers and a lot of brands that would really want to reach, this particular audience. So I really like it. I'm excited for the team over there in terms of being able to leverage this and grow and find some interesting new revenue from it. So it might sound a bit capitalistic, but that's the country that you're in. So let's go with it. So yeah, that's all I have to say. All right. Speaking about capitalistic and raising capital now, we'll shift over to our friends at Placer.ai. They've raised a $50 million Series B raise, and so just announced this. It's led by Josh Buckley, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Product Hunt, as well as a guy named Todd Goldberg and Raul Vora, as well as previous investors who've reinvested, Fifth Wall, JBV Capital, and Aleph VC. So, significant amount of capital here. They had raised 12 million in a Series A just back in January of last year. So, we're a year and a little bit later and another 50 million. So, for me, I found this interesting. And the reason is that obviously we know the industry, has struggled a little bit, for this type of, location data, that's, aggregating data from app SDKs and all of that kind of stuff. We've talked a lot about the changes in the rules and the privacy and, the IDFAs and all of that, for months now. The interesting thing as I read this story is they've argued that, yes, while they're sort of normal clients in the retail sector, that, have been closed or not seeing the foot traffic have definitely suffered, they found new revenue in the CPG sector and the hedge fund industry. So I found that kind of interesting. And I will say this much. I can't speak to the CPG part of it specifically, but I can speak to the hedge fund part of it, because I know a lot of different investment banking groups out there that we interact with, and they definitely, have been looking for new insights, new data to help sort of predict where markets are going to go or where certain stocks are going to go or things like that. And I think, looking at location data in this way, as a sort of insight into kind of where the market is going, makes perfect sense for that industry. I do think that you need to do more than just present the data. I think you need to sort of apply true artificial intelligence and predictive modeling to it to make it truly valuable. And I can't speak specifically to what they're offering in that area. But I do know that their data set is strong, and it's quite expansive in terms of what they've got, and now they got $50 million to kind of grow that out, right? So, good for them. And I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously it makes sense. It's also not a new application to be selling this type of data to hedge funds, right? I mean, it's all about prediction and trends and where the market's going. So, I think there's some level of location data and AI, like the machine learning, that has to be applied in the right way to make sense of that. It's not really, I don't know that it's proprietary exactly, because there are other, companies selling this type of data and insights to hedge funds. So that's interesting. It's standard. It's been happening. I think that there's likely that's telling one side of the story, but I think there's another part of the story that's been, hey, what has been bought in a way that has been completely, more of like a contactless service that's going to be less so in the future, predicting that and predicting, how different industries, different verticals really start to scale, over the next coming months. Obviously, I'm expecting a big lift in travel and people starting to move around and want to go on a vacation finally. So, I am expecting a lot of those things, but that's just sort of common sense. It's not necessarily a data-based, it's just reality at this point. So I agree. The question for me is like, what is the future of this 5 years down the road? How much location data can they really have? And what's the impact going to be when we get further, right? It's not a snap play. It's not I've got everybody's, location data because I have a very applicable use case. So, it is completely third party.
Yeah.
So it's like they're reliant on the capture through other parties. So, there's definitely a challenge, I think, in the future of that with, there's a lot more risk and a lot less security in that plan. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and maybe there's, maybe some of this money, gets applied into, acquiring, more first party data, right? Or being in the first party data space directly, right? So I agree. I think a lot of these companies need to figure out new ways to get at that data, or just be directly relevant to the consumers that they want to gather that data from, and even have consumers participate in that. So I think there's a lot of shift coming, a lot of more consolidation coming in our industry, but nonetheless, hey, if somebody can raise $50 million right now in this space,
Go for it.
go for it, right? I mean, this is great. From our industry's point of view, this is fabulous. So I'm excited for Noam and the rest of the team over there. So
Yep.
yeah,
Totally agree.
all right. So that's it. That's our show for this week. 4 stories that we wanted to cover off there, and some interesting angles, new approaches to revenue around COVID. And of course, a little bit of fundraising and acquisition going on there too. So you've been listening to episode number 515 of Location Weekly. We thank you as always for your time. Please reach out if you have story ideas or suggestions, or give us some comments and some love on whatever podcast platform you're consuming this on. And we just thank you. We'll be back next week with another show. Have a great week. Bye.